Good evening everybody, my name is Paul Ballard and I am the District Commander for Essex Police for Chelmsford.
Good evening everybody, my name is Kerry Taylor and I'm the Group Manager for the South East Group, which encompasses Chelmsford and Ballard.
For the Fire Rescue Service, just to be clear.
For the Fire Rescue
For those who
Service.
don't recognise it. Thank you. Good. So really good to be here. The way this normally works is I'll say a few words to start off with, just to give you a bit of a picture of where we think we are across the county. But the main bit of this evening should be what's relevant to you, your questions, your concerns, what we can answer this evening, we will answer this evening, what we need to take away and do some work on, we will do. All of the questions that you raise, we will attempt to answer on the website in due course, so that you can actually see what the answer is. If you have anything which is specific and personal, and you don't wish to air it in a more public forum, we will be around for a bit after the public forum finishes, and if you want to bring something forward to us and discuss it with us then, that's very welcome indeed as well, and we can see if we can resolve those more individual issues in that way. So, in terms of sort of the, welcome, please come. There are seats down the front, as there always are. So I just got started, hello. Just got started with a bit of an introduction, but we were just going to sort of start a kick-off. In terms of where we are overall, I think you probably all know that it's been a few years of investment in Essex Police and indeed in the Fire and Rescue Service. That probably has come to a natural end at the moment, and our real thrust has to be, I think, to try and sustain the services at the strength they are at the moment. You will all be very aware of the overall economic and political backdrop. Public sector funding is tight. We have had a budget in the last year which the government naturally prioritised and set its sights where it needed to do, and with the limited resources available to it, I think tried to do its best. The government thrust at the moment is certainly to want to strengthen neighbourhood policing. Their Safer Streets mission is to strengthen neighbourhood policing, halve knife crime and halve violence against women and girls. Those are all very much in line with our existing policing crime plan, which we put out, and indeed in line with my own objectives in the election last May. So I'm very much hopeful that we are going to be able to work together and work to deliver those priorities. We have a couple of priorities beyond that, particularly around crime prevention, particularly around being visible, being accessible, particularly accessible, I think, to the public, and as well importantly, protecting vulnerable people, and I think very importantly, improving road safety. That often doesn't feature very highly on national priorities, but I'm very conscious here in Essex that bad driving crime, speeding, drunk driving, not using a mobile phone at the wheel, distraction, they kill more people in this county than all other crimes put together. So we do, of course, get very concerned about knife crime and drug-driven knife crime, and we get very concerned about domestic homicide. But it is just worth putting into perspective the fact that speeding alone is as dangerous as either of those. And if you add up road crime completely together, it's more than 4 times the level of harm that the other crimes in our county are. So I make no apology for having road safety up there as a really important block of the priorities that we have here in Essex. And that probably means that we have to stretch our resources to make sure we cover that as well. So yeah, we had a very tight budget settlement for both services last year. We, for both services, have had to put various capital projects on hold. So investment for the longer term future has been challenged. We have got the comprehensive spending review coming up, the multi-year comprehensive spending review coming up in the spring is what they said. I understand that their intention is to hopefully publish in April, May time. And we've put a submission into that. I am one of the two national leads for finance, the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners. So working with the National Police Council, we put in a national bid as well, saying what we need to have over the next 3 years. We will see how that goes. It really is important that we impress on the government that they need to fund the expansion of neighbourhood policing. They're talking about 13,000 more people in neighbourhood policing. They need to fund that properly if we're going to deliver it. I would really welcome it, but unfortunately the experience of last year was that whilst we got a chunk of extra funding from central government, it wasn't as much as the extra bills that we got from central government for the police pay settlement and for the national insurance contributions. So they gave us £16 million of extra funding and gave us £21 million of extra bills. That's meant that we have had to raise the council tax precept here, so you will be having your bills, if you haven't had them already, quite soon, and that will tell you that we are raising the precept for policing by 5.7%, and we are raising the precept for fire and rescue budget for just under 6%. So that will enable us to maintain our firefighter strength and our policing strength. It's a painful situation to be raising tax at the same time as merely being able to sustain our strength where it is. It will involve a little bit of a pay cut for police officers, so we will be reducing the South East allowance for everybody, and we will also unfortunately be having to make do with slightly fewer police staff supporting the police officers to make that work. But overall, I'm confident that we can maintain Essex Police in the sort of strength it is at the moment, which is really working in terms of getting crime down. We have more than halved homicide over the last few years. We have reduced antisocial behaviour by 3/4. We've reduced burglary by half, and even the more really difficult crimes to deal with, where we have to learn a lot about how we deal with them, like domestic abuse, we've even managed to reduce that now by 15% from the peak, which is a really good step forward. It had been rising pretty much inexorably by about 20% per annum for the last few years, so that's a good step forward. But we have a lot more to do, particularly I think around rape and serious sexual assault. How we can actually reduce that across the county is a challenge still, and I don't think we have the tactics in place yet which are going to make that work. And of course we have things that come up, even if we do know how to deal with them, where there is a sudden surge. Shoplifting, you'll have read all about that. That has certainly been something, particularly with violence, where we need to do more, and we are doing more. We have a new programme in place, Operation Pegasus it's called, working nationally, which is very much focused on frequent and persistent shoplifters, and particularly those who are doing it as part of an organised crime network. And we're also particularly sensitive at the moment, I think, to the rise in vehicle theft. So we've seen a big surge in vehicle theft over the last couple of years. I've been up to Coventry and talked to Jaguar Land Rover, had Ford and Toyota into my office. We're talking to them about how to improve security. I think they're doing a lot. Jaguar Land Rover have committed £15 million to improving the security in their vehicles, but also our officers are doing more, and we are being very successful at the moment in rolling up the organised crime gangs that are doing that work. So we need to get that back down again from where it's risen to. So there are always challenges, but I'm pretty confident at the moment that we have a police service which is in good shape to do a lot of what it needs to do. And similarly with the fire and rescue service, as I said, with them we've also had to put some major capital projects, investment in a new fire training centre, investments in our fleet workshops. They're, if not paused, they're, shall we say, we've eased back on the accelerator on those, and we're having to deliver them more slowly. But we have managed to maintain, particularly the big investments we've made recently in fire protection. So that's in the aftermath of the Grenfell tragedy. I think we all learned that we needed to do more about keeping buildings safe, and particularly the high-rise buildings across the county. We've bolstered that area. There's been a lot of training, a lot of expertise, and an expansion in headcount in the fire and rescue service. We are able to maintain that, and you will see, you probably already have seen it, in Harlow we had to issue a prohibition notice on a building. That meant decanting, I think, more than 200 families, which we had to work very closely with the local authority to make work. you will probably see more of those things if we cannot get building owners to remediate their buildings properly. We'll have to make sure we keep people safe in a different way. So that's probably enough from me in terms of overview. We're a little bit over the 10 minutes and normally I myself, I'm sorry about that. But thank you for listening. But let's go to the Q&A session. Mark has the microphone. If you could please use the microphone for the benefit, as I say, of the listening millions, or at least Mrs. Hirst. That would be really welcome. Who's first, please? Sir.
And I speak, obviously, from a position of ignorance, but it seems to me that as we move on, technology takes over, and there's a lot of crime that's probably involved technology, phishing and computer crime, and now AI and all that sort of thing. Could you say something about how you're developing your work so that you can handle these new means of crime?
So if I say a bit, and if you want to come in, so you're absolutely right. I mean, it's gone from being a situation where it was about keeping people safe in public space to one where we wanted to keep them safe in their home from domestic violence, to one where we now need to keep them safe in their home from fraud, child sexual abuse, all of those things which are in your living room because of your mobile phone and your computer and your linked television. The national lead for that is taken by the City of London Police, their lead on fraud, and the regional lead for online abuse is taken by our regional crime unit, which is one where we collaborate with 7 other forces across the East of England. So we do a lot, we invest quite a lot in the technology to make sure it happens. We're certainly, we have a team which is pursuing people online and trying to make that work. But I think we're also very dependent on the skills that we get from people like the National Crime Agency and the City of London Police to be effective in that. We really do need people to report it. Very often with fraud, people report it to their bank but not to the police. And we would really like to have more of that. And I'm a board member of a thing called the Eastern Region Cyber Resilience Centre, which is about prevention of cyber crime, online crime. And that's working really with businesses to try and help them keep themselves safe from not just phishing, but also the kind of blackmail attacks where if someone can get behind their firewall, their business can be frozen, and they may need to be ransomed. We need to be able to make sure that they can prevent getting into those circumstances in the first place. So there are a lot of different bits going on, but I think we do need to invest in better technology, because in my previous career in the city, you would really have had a computer doing most of that, scanning the airwaves for people doing bad things, and only really got involved when the computer said, by the way, there is someone based in 45 Acacia Avenue, wherever it may be, who is doing this sort of stuff. You need to get a gang of people down there and arrest them. So, due respect to your turn.
Thank you. Fortunately for me, Mr. Hirst has already covered a lot of the national picture and some of the infrastructure that's in place around the investigation of fraud and serious fraud through the City of London and other partners. But what I can do is give you a bit of a localised picture for Chelmsford specifically. So it is something that we do a lot of work around. It is something that we do treat very seriously, and it is something that we do like to prevent as much as we're able. So the local community policing team, along with partners from our local policing support unit, which is a department that works not in Chelmsford but works across Essex, do regular events and crime prevention and advice and safeguarding events at various different banks and other local associations and places where historically more vulnerable people might either live or associate, and we have a lot of contact with different community groups to provide some of that advice and some of that support to them. Additionally, across Essex, and not just in Chelmsford, we've got really good working practices with banks. So all of the major banks have signed up to, along with Essex Police and other police forces, around the banking protocol. So if we have a customer go in and wish to withdraw an unusual amount of money for their bank, the bank will call us and tell us that they're there and that we need to go down and make sure that that person's actually withdrawing it for a legitimate reason. Now, that's not to sound like it's some sort of nanny state, but what we do find is, unfortunately, one of these methods of fraud is to have people go and withdraw the money themselves, and then they will come out and collect that money at an undisclosed location possibly the home address. So it's there just to make sure that that person's safe, and that the reason why they're withdrawing that money isn't because someone's trying to charge them £10,000 to fix a gutter. So that sort of thing is already in place. So it is something that we do work really hard on locally, and that's notwithstanding the areas that Mr. Hirst has already touched upon around the investigation of that from a sort of a more national and localised figure perspective. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, hi there. My question is about, you speaking earlier about the move towards more community policing and neighbourhood policing, and you also spoke about the reduction in homicide rates. Yet in the last sort of 5, 7, 8 years, there's been an explosion in the murders. I'm interested to know where the reduction in homicide rates, where that figure comes from and over what time period. I've looked at the last 20 murders that took place in Chelmsford, and predominantly, I think something like 18 of the 20 all took place outside of the CM1 postcode. So mainly in the outskirts, Brittle, Great Ballard, areas like that. Yet Chelmsford policing focus seems to be almost entirely on the town centre. The town centre's covered by a raft of CCTV cameras. It's got its own policing team, and the outskirts just seem to be left, even in problem areas like, which are well known, like Meadgate, where there's been 2 very serious incidents in the last 6 months. Why is there so much focus on the town centre, where almost no murders have taken place, and the outskirts are just left and ignored?
I hear your concern. I'm quite sure that the Chief Inspector will want to come in a bit on the detail about Little Meadgate, Great Ballard, etc. And I know that there are areas that we are concerned about and concerned with, and have attempted to take some measures on. In terms of your first question around, do the figures add up, I'm quite sure you're quite well aware, homicide, murder, manslaughter, they are probably the most accurate figures that we're going to get for any sort of crime. Murder does not go unreported, and thankfully in this county it does not go unsolved. We have 100%, a long-term standing 100% success rate in bringing murderers and people who commit manslaughter to justice, which is really good. With the cases where that hasn't happened, I'm sure you could, like me, the 3 or 4 of them over the last decade or more, we could both name. In terms of the statistic, I mean, the year before I came into office, so I've been here for 8 years, the year before that we had over 30 homicides. In the last year we had less than 50. So that's the swing. The success across the county has been strongest in bringing down knife-related or drug-related knife homicide. But I would also say that our success has probably been least here actually in Chelmsford, which we're very conscious of. I'm very aware of the fact that we have more to do here. So in some areas of the county we have reduced homicide to 0. We haven't done that yet here in Chelmsford, and that is a concern for us and something we can take forward. I think your colleague probably just looked up the figures on his phone to check whether I'm telling the truth or not. Okay. Paul.
Thank you. I mean, Mr. Hirst has already mentioned the homicide element to it, so I'll touch on the local policing perspective. And I do understand your concern around the city centre and the policing of the city centre, as well as the the outside wards. What I can say is that although it may feel like it, and I understand why it feels like it, because obviously the heightened visibility of not just police officers but other people in uniform and other individuals within the security setting within the city centre. My teams do police the outside or outer areas, and I'm not just talking about Ballard, I'm talking about Molsham, some of the other, Walthams and Brittle and Southwood and Ferrers, and some of the other areas that are a little bit further out, including sort of Wickford. We do listen to the community when there are concerns. I accept that sometimes it may not feel like that, because as you can appreciate, we're getting an awful lot of information, and we try and respond as much as we can to the information that we have in the most appropriate way. And we also want to know where there are issues, because that's the whole point of the police, is order to sort of keep people safe and make sure they're resolving these issues for the community. We do police in Baddow specifically. I'm acutely aware of the challenges that Baddow's had over the last sort of 6 to 12 months specifically, and I can understand why the community are concerned around that. But what I can say is that my teams are committed to ensuring that the community are as safe as they can be in Baddow and the surrounding areas. It's not just city centre focused and centric. I have to be realistic around the fact that the city centre does have the highest volume of crime, based on the highest volume of people that visit it and live in it and work in it. But that's not to say that we aren't aware of the impact of crime on the other areas outside of the city centre. So I do fully accept and acknowledge that perception, but I can say with confidence that that is not something that we do. We do police the external areas around the city centre. And you know, for example, you know, if I look at the last 12 months in Baddow West, crime is reduced. Baddow East, crime is reduced. I accept that, again, that's a perception and a recorded data element of it, but those two specific wards have seen a reduction in crime in the last 12 months. Not all crime, so certain crime types have reduced and some have increased slightly, but in general terms, crime is down in both areas. Again, that's not to us pat ourselves on the back and say it's a job done. We will continue to support and work in those areas where those challenges are. So again, I would just ask that yourself and the community keep talking to us and keep telling us where these issues are and what's causing the concerns within the community from a policing perspective. There's plenty of methods to get hold of us on the Essex Police website, so it's not just about phone calls. I mean, there's a direct email address to the community policing team and a direct phone number to the community policing team that, with the hours that it will be answered, and you can speak to one of my officers or PCSOs. So if you please just keep talking to us about where these issues are, and we'll always look to respond as much as we are able.
A bit of a tricky one here, because I know one of your ex-special inspectors was in court today. I can say his name, she's out in the public eye. Chris Gillian, this may ring a bell, no? He was a special inspector from 2019, I think, till he was asked to leave. It's now, the CPS have now charged him with a sexual assault whilst he was a police officer. Now, the incredible thing about that was when he left under a cloud, and I know this is very true, he was told to resign, this is what I'm just checking now, because he gave him the heads up he would be placed on the fire list or sacked, so he was allowed to resign. Now, for some strange reason, the CPS had come forward after 4 years. It was a female officer involved, and they've now charged him with sexual assault. Now, my question is, the whole of the police force knew about this guy and this, what his habits was towards this female officer. He was asked to leave quietly, maybe hoping it would go away, but now today he's appearing in Essex court charged with sexual assault when he was a special inspector. It doesn't give people much confidence that rather than deal with it at the time like anyone else would, he was allowed to leave under a cloud and resign. I'm just wondering why nothing was done at the original time.
I think he was actually a special superintendent.
Special inspector, superintendent.
Yeah. But you're right, in court today in Ipswich.
Yeah.
That case will follow its due course. As a special constable, of course, he was a volunteer in policing. I do not know the details of the case and how or why he was asked to go. He certainly was asked to go, you're absolutely right. But having heard about it on the news today, as you have, I too will be asking more questions as to why this has resulted in a criminal charge when clearly that was not the case back in 2019.
Yeah, I mean, that's what a lot of people, a few people got in touch with the group today and said that why was this about to happen? If he's committed a sexual assault, whether he's an officer or not, he should still be charged with that offence. And from what I'm told, the lady officer, and this is only what I'm told, I'm fairly confident, has now come forward, and the CPS have chose to follow it through and obviously I don't know what in court today, but I know he was charged with sexual assault. So I think it'd be good for Essex Police to maybe at some stage put out a statement basically saying why he was allowed to walk away from this originally, because it was 2019, so what, 6 years ago? And it's only now just come before the CPS, so I'd like to know what caused the gap in between the two to give a little bit more confidence towards the police.
As indeed would I just would like to say, perhaps relevant to what we're talking about, in the light of the awful murder of Sarah Everard by a serving police officer a few years ago, we, along with every other police service in the country, conducted a review of vetting, a complete wash through of the whole of the service. And I am pleased that our Chief Constable takes a very robust approach to this. He has been Chief Constable since 2018, just to remind you of that. He has made sure that we have quite a number of people have failed vetting, quite a number of people have been through accelerated misconduct hearings held by him, where he's felt the evidence is overwhelming, and quite a few others have been through the more formal misconduct hearing process with 2 external legal advisors, where there is a matter for debate and the evidence needs to be presented from both sides. It's something that we have taken very seriously. We invest heavily in our vetting to make sure that Essex Police are in the right place. And where we have found wrongdoing, people have been held to account. But in the particular case that you mentioned, I will look into it further, and we will make sure that more information does come out.
Evening. You mentioned neighbourhood policing as something that was very important to you and important perhaps to the government as well. Can you say what specific plans you have for neighbourhood policing or perhaps just more visible policing in Chelmsford? Because although you talk about reporting crime going down, and I'm sure your figures are right, I think if policing isn't visible, there's a danger that reporting goes down because people just feel there's no point because they think, well, they never see the police. And if they don't see the police, there's a concern that the sort of things like the driving offences that you mentioned, or street crime, just it doesn't go reported, but it still impacts on people's lives. So what specific plans do you have for neighbourhood policing or more visible policing in Chelmsford? Thanks.
So we've got to in Chelmsford. I might actually hand over to Paul and to Spencer to talk a bit about what we're intending to do here with the partnership. Bigger picture, so over the last few years we have doubled the size of community policing teams in Essex. The government's new initiative about giving additional funding for neighbourhood policing means we can do more. We have tried very much to increase visibility. So town centre teams were introduced. You have a town centre team here in Chelmsford that does patrol town centre. We had the complaint that we've got too much in the town centre, but I don't think we have too much in the town centre. What you want to do is see more elsewhere as well. No one's asking for less in the town centre. We've also introduced a rural engagement team, which does the same job as the town centre teams, but in the more rural environments, and making sure it gets out and about and be visible there. And that's really all about a push for more prevention activity. So police visibility is absolutely key if we are going to be preventing crime happening. And we've also introduced new technology, making sure that we are aware of where crime is. That can be reporting crime, it can also be intelligence picked up by patrols, but actually identifying what are called lower level super output areas. What does that mean? The area of about 2 football pitches where we know that there is a particular focus on crime and doing hotspot interventions there. So proactive patrols, often together with the local council. That's really worked in the areas where we've done it. It's often reduced crime by over 3/4. And that's probably, I think, one of the key reasons why we've been seeing the big reduction that we have in antisocial behaviour. So we will do more of that. The hotspot policing activity is really powerful. We've also done quite a lot of safer streets activity. That means investment. This is done more by my office rather than through the police's office. and that can be improved CCTV, it can be improved lighting, it can be improved sight lines, it can be sponsoring neighbourhood watch groups, it can be sponsoring neighbourhood awareness groups, putting up signage, a lot of different things, some of the town centre stuff around. I'm stealing your lines. Sorry, Spencer. I'll hand over to you in a moment, but we do a lot of that and we can do more of it. I think over the last 5 years we've learnt a lot more about what works. It's now a question of doing more of what works. And the good news about the police funding this year, I gave you the tough bit of it, but the good news is that it will mean 74 more people or more officers in community policing teams across the county as a result of this year's budget. So yes, you're right, I can see you doing that mental calculation divided by 10. That's roughly about how many you'll get here.
That's less than one.
74? Less divided by 10 isn't less than 1. Not by 100, by 10. Yeah. Spencer, do you want?
Yeah, thank you, Roger. You did steal my lines there.
Sorry.
No, what I was going to say is when we talk about policing, it doesn't necessarily have to be police. So a lot of our officers, community protection officers, community safety officers, do joint patrols where, show my little badge here, we're all credited with Essex Police, we've all been vetted like police officers. So when we talk about police visibility, it doesn't necessarily have to be police officers, it can be detached youth workers. So just having that presence on the street. And I think the area which Roger picked up on, and we're in the second, and I think approvals for the third year are going to be announced soon, the Opdal funding, which is the hotspot patrolling. So we do have to follow the data. I mean, the two hotspots for Chelmsford, one is in the city centre around the Parkway area, and the other is in North Avenue near Melbourne. So following the data, the super output areas, that's where we've been doing this work. And it hasn't just been the police doing it, the patrols, it's been the community safety team, but it's also one of the most important things is the detached youth work. So having detached youth workers working with the young people, trying to understand what the problems are, is equally as important.
Paul, do you want to come in as well?
Thank you. One of the benefits of going third is I don't have an awful lot to add, but I will add what I can. So just to advise you, Mr. Hirst and Spencer have already touched upon a lot of the things that I was going to potentially have discussed, but in a hyper-localised perspective, for the Chelmsford community policing team, neighbourhood policing team, there will be an increase in numbers. So there will be additional resources, additional officers going into the neighbourhood policing teams as part of the government funding. The number of additional officers is means tested in regards to the size of the existing team and size of population, volume of crime. So it's not just a case of splitting it in 10 equal ways, because as you can appreciate, some areas require more than others and some maybe less. So that is what, for us, from a localised policing perspective, what that will mean. And with more officers, with more team, more staff, we'll be able to do more. Hopefully you'll appreciate that this funding is a recent announcement when you look in the grand scheme of things. So a lot of the details are still being worked through around what that actually looks like once we have those additional officers and what we're going to be looking to do with them. But obviously Essex Police and the Chelmsford City Council will always be open and transparent about what our plans are. But at this stage, what I can say is it would mean additionality in regards to the number of people on the community policing team in Chelmsford.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, Chris Davidson. I'm a Chelmsford City Councillor for Patching Hall Board and also act to be the Cabinet Member for Finance for the City Council. So I've got some sympathy with what you're saying about finance. What I would say is I think that there is a lot of what Essex Police do that it's hard to disagree with. We've just been talking about partnership with the City Council. That seems to be working well. So we want to see that continue and build on that. So that's great. You've mentioned a number of things like the Essex Police's ability to respond to really serious crime and the success in doing that. You've set out in what you said, and I've read the booklet, or I skimmed the books, as I should perhaps say, that you put out, the priorities that you've got, it's hard to disagree with. But when I talk to my residents, what concerns them is the lower level crime. That's the things that they experience, I was going to say day in, day out, which is probably an exaggeration, but the things that my residents experience are car crime, burglary and cycle theft, and those lower level crimes. We're fortunate that we don't experience the more serious crimes, or at least very infrequently. And what they would like is more police focus on those lower level crimes in order to drive up the clear-up rates. So when we look at the statistics that you helpfully publish, they show the rate of clearing up those low-level crimes is pretty poor. So that if you are burgled, the chances of you reporting it to the police responding, the police catching the burglar, and there being some sort of outcome that satisfies you is not great. And as I've said, it's hard to disagree with your priorities, and it's also hard to disagree with the proposition you've made, which is that you only have a certain amount of funding, and the government has not been as generous with that as you would have liked them to be. So what more funding would you need, is the question, in order to get the response to those other crimes up to a level that my residents would regard as acceptable, and give them some hope that if they are burgled, if their bicycle is stolen, if their car is broken into, and or their van and their tools are stolen, and so on, if their car is stolen, there would be a better prospect of the culprits being caught and held to account.
Thank you. I will let the Chief Inspector answer most of that, but I think that the first response is that more is more. So if we can have more, we can do more. When we set up our investment programme back in 2017, we did a piece of work looking at where the pressures were, and we actually concluded we needed 250 cops immediately, 450 to do the job reasonably well, and 800 to get ahead of where we needed to be and prevent crime. We had a superintendent at the time called Andy Profit who wrote me a note saying it's not 800, it's 900 and you need to do it now. He's now the Chief Constable of Hertfordshire after having risen to be Deputy Chief Constable of Essex. So he's a guy who knows what he's talking about. And actually he was right, we have got 900 more cops now than we had, and that is why crime is coming down. To do what you want, I think there's two ways of looking at it. One is time. We now have resources which can do a lot of what you want to see. Of course, we could do it faster with more. If we had the same sort of funding that, for instance, West Yorkshire or West Midlands have, we would have another 15-20% more funding, another 15-20% more cops, and we could do it faster. So I will continue to lobby for fairer funding for Essex to make that happen. Why we are I think we're regarded as being part of the rich South East and not in need of the support that Northumbria and West Midlands and West Yorkshire get. I need to change that perception. We are the industrial South East. This is the beating heart of the country. This is the place that makes it happen. We need the support. But on the details, I'll hand over to a man who knows what he's talking about.
Thank you, Mr. Hirst. So, vehicle crime, burglary, cycle theft. All issues that I have, if I had any, I would have pulled my hair out a number of times over the last 2 years. I can reassure you, and hopefully those in the room that have discussed with me previously or worked with me in other areas will understand that I don't say things lightly, and I mean what I say, and I can assure you that from my perspective, we are as dialed into as we possibly can to the issues that are causing the residents problems in regards to these types of crimes. Burglary was a particular issue approximately 12 to 18 months ago, and I'm talking about a particular type of burglary. Initially it was around vehicle crime and subsequent vehicle crime, but it then moved on to garage and shed breaks in regards to bicycles and motorbikes. Similarly, vehicle crime specifically was a big challenge around keyless entry around certain vehicle types. I won't name them, but there were certain types of vehicle that were being targeted in Chelmsford. And then we look at cycle theft. Cycle theft, Chelmsford was a significant outlier for cycle theft in Essex in regards to the volume of it based on the commuter economy that we have and the infrastructure that's already in place. So these are all areas that myself and my team have worked really, really hard over the last 18 months to 2 years to deal with. And it's been a long road, and I'll be open about the fact that if you was to look at our recorded data figures for crime in those areas this time last year, you'd have been seeing an awful lot of red where there have been increases over the last 12 months to that point. What I can say is that whilst it's, again, not a suggestion that we're asking for medals and tea and cakes at the moment, all three of those crime types, so residential burglary, vehicle crime as a whole, and cycle theft are all reduced in the last 12 months in Chelmsford. So again, not to suggest that it doesn't occur, unfortunately, obviously we would like it not to, but what I can say is there have been a significant number of police activity in those three particular crime types over the last 12 to 18 months. There have been a number of prosecutions where people have been charged, sent to court and been sentenced for offences in regards to those types of offending. And there has also been a good reduction in all three areas within the Chelmsford district for those three particular crime types, because we understand that those types of crime, those types of individuals that are committing that crime are significantly impacting our communities. So it's not just, you know, as Spencer quite rightly put, as said to Mr. Hirst, about the violent and serious crime. Absolutely, we need to continue to focus on that, but we also need to make sure that we're focusing on those crimes that are affecting people every day. So I can tell you, because I've lived it for the last 2 years, that those three, and it's interesting that you pointed out those three, because they're the three that have been really key to our focus around tackling local community crime in Chelmsford over the last 12 to 18 months.
Thank you. Does anyone have a question for that fire and rescue service?
Yes.
This guy's been waiting. Can we come to you after? Sorry, Mark's saying that we've got to go, so we've got the mic. We'll come to you next.
Thank you. My name is Richard Hyland. I'm a city councillor in one of the sticks in Galleywood, out on the edge. I'm looking at the figures for a monthly crime, and I guess reflecting on a recent Q&A, I should start with a thank you. And the thank you being that you're keeping it down to 300 a month-ish on a regular basis. But when I look at your figures, 385 million, and we're 300 crimes a month in Chelmsford, I think to myself, what are my residents thinking about when they look at what they're putting into your services? What are they getting out of it? I think Councillor Davison mentioned the low-level crimes, but everybody's looking at their cost, as you are. But they don't see what they're getting back for that money that they're putting in. I actually do have a question for the fire service as well, because I could see you were quiet in the corner there. I notice there are less and less fire engines in the area. There are less and less crew covering those areas that are full-time. So, how do you feel our area, Essex particularly, is covered by your service? Are we safe on a fire area, or are you letting our residents down again if you're 10 or 12 minutes away rather than 5 or 6? That saves lives.
Thanks. So, in terms of what you see for your money on policing, I think we just do need some time to bear in mind where we live and what sort of country we live in, and actually what sort of amazing service these people give. I attended the police commendation ceremony on Friday for people, one member of the public and the others, police officers, being commended for saving lives, rescuing people. You know, someone locked behind closed doors, CPR actually brought him back to life. But also putting their own lives at risk. One police officer who'd arrested someone in a car while the officer was on foot, putting himself in the way of the vehicle and bringing that person to justice. They do that sort of stuff all the time, just as the fire and rescue teams. It is awful for them when, as recently in Elmdon, they arrive at a scene where there has been a fatality, but they did manage to save one person, just not the other. And of course, road traffic collisions, they are the most frequent sources of that level of harm in the county, and that is an awful thing for people to have to be involved in rescuing and resolving that issue, while the rest of us are probably not knowing what's happening, just annoyed with the fact that our journey's been delayed. And they're doing really amazing work. We live in a country with very low crime. There are more homicides in Chicago in 1 year than there are in the whole of the United Kingdom. We live in a country with enormous civil liberties. I've lived myself in Switzerland, Germany, America. You're free to do stuff here that you aren't free to do in much of the rest of the world. You are free in America, but they have crime that's 5 times ours. We live in a country where you can police generally without carrying a firearm. I'll never forget being in a hotel lobby in central London for one of the police awards events with a senior American cop wearing uniform, and our chief constable was with me, said, "Oh, let's just walk down the road then to the other hotel where the event is." And he said, "But I haven't got a gun." "You don't need a gun, you're on Park Lane." "No, I'm wearing a uniform, I haven't got a gun, I can't go out." That is how other cops perceive their public. That's what you get for your money. The fact you can go about your business in this country largely in enormous freedom and enormous safety. We want it to be better. You know, crime troughed back in 2015. It then rose again. I really want, and I really believe, with these people supported with the resources that we have, that we can get crime back down below its historic lows. If you look back at where we were in this country 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, the level of homicide is through the floor, the level of violence on the streets is through the floor. We have practically eradicated infanticide. Babies are not dying from violence in anything like the numbers that they were. All of that is not just policing, it's not just fire and rescue, it's not just local councils, it's societal change, but they've played their role and made that difference. So forgive me from waxing a bit too lyrical probably, but I really believe what these people do makes a huge difference to us, and we live in an amazing country.
Thank you, Mr. Hirst. Thank you very much for your question. I do really appreciate it. In reference to the feeling unsafe, I would like to reaffirm that we are absolutely in a safe place with regards to our fire cover. Now, we have a very strict response standard, so for potentially life-threatening incidents, we aim to be at the incident for the first fire engine, first appliance, within 10 minutes, and all other fire engines are within 15 minutes for all other emergencies. The first fire appliance to be in attendance within 15 minutes. Okay. Now, regarding Chelmsford Fire Station, that's a whole time station. So we have 4 watches. I don't know how much you know, sir, but we have 4 watches comprising of 13 people, 13 firefighters, which equates to 52 people. Now, I can confirm that that is about right. We have 52 people working at Chelmsford Fire Station. Regarding the other stations, such as Ballard, yes, that is a challenge, and South Woodham, but we are working really hard to bolster personnel on those stations. They are on call, and I'm working with my team to improve that. We still work within the response standards with the 10 and 15 minutes. And I would just like to say that if there is anybody listening online, or indeed within the room, if you would like to become an on-call firefighter and live within 5 minutes of that station, over 18 years old and fit, physically fit, we would be delighted to have your application. Now, the other part I would like to talk about really is that we have this excellent fire rescue plan in front of us, which is this document here. From that, we have our 6 priorities, and it drives what we do as a fire and rescue service in Essex. So we are looking at working more flexibly, more dynamic, to cover any incidents that take place. Now, falling out of that, we have a prevention. So if we can prevent fires, that's great. We have a protection strategy, so to look at our high-rise buildings falling out of Grenfell, and ways we can make them safer, to work with our local communities, to look at any flammable cladding materials that are on these buildings. And thirdly, we have our response strategy. So all of these align, and we will be looking to launch our community risk management plan imminently, I believe, which is a really good thing, just to understand where our risks are and what we can do as a fire service to meet the points that you've raised. I hope that's okay in terms of an answer. Thank you very much for your question.
Maybe just to add one bit to that, so my real priority is to make sure we get the number of people killed and seriously injured down. And I'm really pleased that over the last few years we have had some success in that. Keeping it down is now a really important element, but it is just worth noting that we now have 20% fewer house fires than we had before COVID. That prevention and protection work is probably the most important long term. Acknowledging that we need to have a response in place for when things do go wrong, but fewer people getting hurt is really where I want to put the emphasis. So please.
Thank you. Before I ask you the question, Mr. Hirst, I'm glad you mentioned the drivers, specifically around Chelmsford. The driving is appalling. There's light jumpers, they seem to think red, you can get 2 more cars over. Now, it's not only Chelmsford, it's all over, but you never see a police car when these idiots are doing some of the things they do. And some of the things they do, undertaking, say red lights, even simple things, which probably comes under some department, sitting in the yellow boxes, it snarls up the whole town. Now, I don't know whether you rely too much on the speed cameras, whether you're getting the obviously catching people, but it is the standard of the drivers. I know you can't do anything to teach them, but I think a few fines sometimes might adjust their behaviour. And question for the fire. Fire hydrants, am I right in assuming that you do the maintenance yourself? You do, right. Some months ago, I was talking to a couple of chaps who were actually lifting the lids, cleaning them out, and I was quite shocked with their stories. They said they go out sometimes, they can't find some of them. Some of them are so full of soil, they have to dig them out. Now, if it was an emergency call, that's time wasted, isn't it? And I was speaking recently to the fire safety manager at Benfleet about something different, and brought this topic up. She said they get a lot of calls into her department about this issue. Now, you come out to fight a fire, you need to know you've got an adequate supply of water. I mean, it's quite important, isn't it? And just one final question. With all the new housing estates being weighed through by our city council, is there ever any thought about, have you got enough water in the system to fight fires? Because I don't think we're getting any extra water from anywhere. It's all being pushed this way, every way. So, that's it.
So, Kerry, do you want to go first and talk about that water availability issue?
Certainly, thank you for your question. I've gone 40 minutes without any questions, I have 2 at once. So again, I will try my best. With regards to hydrants, yes, we do have a hydrant team, maintenance team.
Yeah.
In fact, my uncle works on that particular team as a retired firefighter. Now, they go out around the county to make sure that the hydrants are serviceable. and can provide water to us as a fire service as and when we need. So that hopefully that's some peace of mind.
Yeah.
Of course, there are some hydrants that are naturally wear and tear. They do deteriorate, and it's the job of the team to make sure that they can get them up to speed again so that they function properly. Regarding water at a fire incident, we're lucky to have around about 1,800 litres. In fact, I think it's 1,818 litres per fire engine to provide water. Now we also have the fire hydrants, and they are scattered along the roads. So we rest assured that we have the water that we need when we need it. In regards to the planning applications for housing estates, these applications go through, it's called a safety action group, and we have our protection officers as well that look and review these applications just to see where the water hydrants are likely to be. So that is discussed to the best of my knowledge. And yeah, is there anything else I've missed?
Well, I forgot to mention, these chaps told me it's a 2-year cycle, is that correct?
I'm not sure about the cycle times, but I can certainly find out and get back to you if you like.
Okay.
Yeah, like maybe talk afterwards.
I'll ask you a question next time.
That's fine. Okay. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Something about the policing traffic.
Yes. So you're very correct in regards to some of the challenges within the Chelmsford district and some of the traffic flow through the district and around the district around traffic offences and speeding in general terms. Invariably, I can tell you from professional experience, you see some strange things when you're driving a police car, particularly, even I do it when I see a police car behind me. I wonder what I've done that might get me stopped. But what you don't tend to see very often is people on their mobile phones or going through red lights because they've seen you, and obviously I'm not going to do that. But what I can say is that we in Essex Police employ different tactics in order to manage our road safety. So we've got plain vehicles, we've got, it's been publicised, we've utilised HGVs in order to be able to see into the cabs of HGVs along our major A roads and motorways in Essex. And similarly, we don't just rely on the fixed cameras. So just to give you a bit of an idea, we've had approximately 8,500 fixed camera offences in the last calendar year, so 24, January to December in Chelmsford. But in addition to that, we've had approximately about 700, just over 700 mobile camera offences recorded by officers at the side of the road or on the gantries over the top. Identifying individuals, and the technology in relation to that is ever improving, and we're looking to utilise it more. So what I can say is Essex Police do take road safety very seriously. You're absolutely spot on around the road traffic offending. And if there is a particular challenge or issue around the yellow boxes, the one that normally gets raised to me is the one around High by Bridge Road, but it's not a yellow box, it's a keep clear as opposed to a yellow box, so it's advisory, not enforceable. But we do deal with those. So if you've got a particular location or a junction where the yellow boxes aren't being adhered to, that's causing a significant issue within the local area, then we will always look to try and increase our numbers and look at patrolling those areas. Just let us know when those particular challenges are taking place. So whilst it may not feel like it, I get why you do that, because I drive around sometimes when I'm off duty and I see people doing things perhaps they shouldn't, that I make note of. But I know it happens, but I can assure you that from an Essex Police perspective, it is something that we do focus on. It is something that we do enforce. It's a little bit of a hidden enforcement, because unless you're the one doing it, you don't generally see it. And hopefully you're not the one that gets seen doing it.
I probably will on the way home.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
Just take care.
Yeah. So, but I can reassure you, it is something that we do utilise, and a significant number of offences are put to prosecution or fines or driver education courses or whatever it may be, through the work of both local police, but we also get a lot of support from our force-wide resourcing around roads policing and other departments. So yeah, we're quite fortunate in Chelmsford, given where we're based and where they're based, that we get good cover.
Thank you.
Spencer, just a very quick question. As you're aware, Sunday we've got quite a large meeting in Vigo, which you're obviously going to send a reply to Andy back about some issue. One question I want to ask is, you spoke about these two hotspot areas. I think one was in Melbourne and one was somewhere else. The problem I have with that is that Meadgate is very much in lockdown a lot of the time. People are scared to speak out for obvious reasons. So I don't ever think you're going to get the real feel of what's going on there, okay? And it kind of concerns me that Meadgate doesn't meet maybe what you call the threshold for, you know, extra policing or extra anything like that. It's a question I'm going to be asked on Sunday. And I'd certainly like to know what Meadgate has to do to get, so we say, special measures, if that's the right thing, because it certainly needs it. We've had 2 knife attacks there, 1 fatal in 6 months, you know, and it's an ongoing issue in here as well. And I spoke to Mr. Ballard as well, you know, he's on the same street as us, which is great. But I want to know from your point of view what more we can, you know, on that email would be great if you could put as much information as possible, but I just really want to know what it would take to get extra measures in there.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. So we have been doing more high visibility patrols along with the police. In my response, I'll explain that it needs a partnership response. The police just aren't going to fix this, and the City Council aren't. We need all partners on board, so the registered social landlords, CHP, detached youth work. We need a joined up response to us. Talking about data, and I won't bore you all with data, because, you know, if you look at things like serious violence, I mean, I get a monthly Power BI pack of where all the serious violence is, and I know that most of it is in Moulton Central because I get that data every month, and likewise the second hotspot is Marconi Ward. So even things like the work we've been doing around violence against women and girls, we've been doing a lot of work with Nottingham-Trent University where we can map all of our sexual offences, and I know that most of those offences, the majority of them, are 5 minutes walk from the city centre. So I think if we look at the data, Meadgate isn't going to be an outlier, but what we need to look at is what you're talking about, are the community concerns. Yes, we've had 2 knife-related incidents in the last 3 months. Yes, as your colleague mentioned, we have homicides in the area. You know, so, and you know, it adds to community tension, and it also increases, you know, when we look at perceptions, when we look at the confidence of the people in the area, it's something we need to look at. So we will be increasing the patrols, and I've given you that assurance that we have met with the other partners, and we'll be meeting again in a month's time to see what progress is being made. And I'll respond to Mr. Graham on what the proposals will be moving forward.
Thank you.
It's all right, boss, I'm not going to ask a question. Just wanted to add to the answer to this gentleman's question around traffic offences. There is also a scheme called Extra Eyes, promoted by Safer Essex Roads. So if you do have a dash cam and you capture footage yourself, you can submit that through the Extra Eyes scheme, and that will be reviewed, and if there is sufficient evidence, then prosecutions can be taken up through that. So just wanted to publicise that scheme to people in the room watching online, because it is really useful, because as we pointed out, if someone sees a police car, they're not going to pick the phone up, but if they see you sitting behind with your dash cam on, it's not going to affect their behaviour. So I'm not sure that's part of the scheme.
No lights come with it, I'm afraid, now. But thank you, Suzanne, it's a very good point.
I'm not going to keep everybody, I just want to say a few thank yous. The fire rescue response times, I had cause to call the fire brigade a year or 2 ago, and they were out in way less than 10 minutes. It was brilliant. I know the fire had gone out, but it was it seemed quite scary at the time. The response of the police, Paul mentioned the last couple of years. Sam Girdleston and Paul made a really big difference, I think, over the last couple of years. I think everybody, all my colleagues, think the same. So thank you for that. Let's just hope you can carry on and build on that. So that was great. Also, I wanted to just mention that on Saturday, I was coming down Ballard bypass, and there was a police car in front. Obviously, I wasn't at all worried because I was abiding by the law. But there were 2 cars that went tearing down the bus lane, and the blue lights came on. The police car pulled out, chased them, And I went past later as the police car was still sitting there with 2 policemen dealing with this incident. So I think it is encouraging when we see that sort of thing. So I agree that it's frustrating when things like that happen and you don't see any response. But that was good. Thank you for Roger Hirst's response to how much more money do you need. That's the first time I've asked the question and got a clear answer. So thanks for the answer. And thank you to Spencer for being Spencer and being brilliant. And keep up the good work.
Yes. Thank you for your attendance. That's been, and you make a very good point, Councillor, that the majority of criminals aren't really a bit stupid, aren't they? It looks as though we've covered most of the questions in the room. Thank you all very much indeed. I hope that's been interesting for you. Certainly these are always very useful for us. We get a different perspective by holding public meetings like this, and we always get additional information that we wouldn't pick up through the normal 101 or 999 or online reporting mechanisms, which are often very transactional. This is really helpful stuff for us. So I do very much appreciate, we all very much appreciate you having turned out on this cold evening, and wish you a very enjoyable remainder of your evening. Thank you very much. Thank you.